So you're the first impression, right? You may be the last impression. And I feel like we're resilient as an industry. You know, in DME companies, I feel like we sometimes dwell on minutia, and I'm a big believer in managing by exception. Say you shave off 2 days in your order to cash process. That's worth a lot of money.
Welcome, Miriam, to the Co-Conspirator Track. Before we get started, I'd love to have you talk a little bit about yourself and your consulting firm.
First of all, Chris, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure, and I love getting to see you, whether it's virtual or it's in person. It's always nice, and especially this time of year. Lucky for me, I get to work in an industry that I'm completely passionate about, and I've been for the last 3+ decades. I get to, in my consulting career, go around to companies, providers of any kind, whether they're independent, they could be national, they could be part of a hospital, they could be part of a pharmacy, and then some. I go into companies and look at the revenue cycle from order to cash and looking for ways to improve efficiencies and to just create an environment where you can realize the cash as quickly as possible in a compliant and a customer experience oriented way where it's the best of the best. And so, as we all know, there's always room for improvement. And the times where I'm not in companies, either writing for the journals or speaking for the state or national associations and serve on committees, because that's my give back. I get to now, of late, get to coach a lot of young leaders, and that is just a personal favorite of mine. So I keep busy.
That's fantastic. And we've interacted a ton, obviously, as you mentioned, and seeing you interacting with the industry folks has been just great, because I think, as you'd mentioned, you've got 30+ years of experience here. You've been through all the different waves of this industry, which is unique, right? I think for a consultant to be in that space, a lot of owners, operators have been here and they're going through the trenches, but you're right there with them. So very much appreciative to see that kind of partnership and co-working capacity. So we're going to dig right in, right? As we talked about, you've worked with tons of folks in this HME industry over the time you've been in the space. When you look at the frontline staff today, really compared to maybe 10 years ago or even 15 years ago, what's really changed in what they're being asked to do on a day-to-day basis? And what are your thoughts on how do they react to that?
Well, first thing is it's completely different, and it always is. And we always have to reinvent ourselves. And one of the reasons why you'd think, who's going to do consulting for 30+ years? It's just like one step before they take a job. What I've noticed is when I go into companies, the beauty of doing this for so long is I see a different skill set on the intake side. And I also see the use of automation in ways we didn't have 10 years ago. And I think what happened was the way that we could do things before with, I don't want to say minimal, but I want to say limited requirements and guidelines. They were less cumbersome and less onerous, to be honest, on the intake staff than they are today. Such that if you think about what we needed 10 years ago versus what we need today, we can't even get to who's the payer. So we went from 10 years ago, we definitely had an insurance verification team and all that. Today, we have to have a team that just figures out who the payer is, forgetting the fact that, are we on e-prescribe and things that we didn't have in an automated fashion before that we certainly have today. It doesn't make it less complicated. It actually makes it more complicated today, and the skill set we need is completely different from the skill set we needed before.
You summarized the intake piece beautifully on that front, right? I mean, the complexity, the knowledge base, the emotional intelligence that these folks have to have these days and be trained up on, if they're not quite there, is fantastic. It's just, I can't imagine being in that space, right? The multi-specialty kind of area. But where do you see in the workflow the highest level of complexity today for HMEs? Is it in intake? Is it in billing? Is it in quality checking? All of the above?
I think when you look at complexity, the reason I always say that intake may be the most complex is because you kind of have to think on your feet. Now, today, it's not necessarily the same, right? Because we get the orders in. We're not getting, unless you do retail or you still take, phone orders, which some do. By and large, you're getting an order in via electronic fax or some way to come into your queue. It's a little bit different. So yes, you have to think on your feet. Now it's a matter of how productive I can be, secure all that I need to be able to be productive and still get the patient out of the hospital in a timely manner. And if they're expecting me there in 30 minutes or an hour, or even if it's not outside of a hospital, maybe it's something that's coming out of a doctor's office, you still need to get it and get it now. So you're the first impression, right? You may be the last impression. So if you're the first impression, you represent the company. I kind of feel like that is what makes the difference or makes or breaks the relationship, in addition to making sure I have all that I need to be able to take a viable order That seems like a lot of pressure.
I totally agree. I think the first impression always the one that lasts the longest, right? So 100% accurate on that front from my perspective. And so in your experience, we've talked a lot about automation now, a little bit, a lot about just that upfront experience at the HME and DME, and how that's so important. I think you've got a ton of experience now with technologies that are coming up, and how important is it for those technology vendors and companies and the ownership and the leadership teams making decisions of which ones to select, where to use them, and then, how to leverage them right into their business? Just walk us through kind of how you advise folks on that model.
It's funny. There's so many coming. Every day there's a new software venture. And I would encourage people to look at their biggest pain points, where they're the weakest, where they could shore up with strengths, and where they're sort of stepping on their own toes, where they're duplicating efforts, where they're gaining a tremendous number of denials, where they're literally missing the forest for the trees. And, in DME companies, I feel like we sometimes dwell on minutia, and I'm a big believer in managing by exception. So I'm looking for, where's the low-hanging fruit? Where can I realize the biggest pocket change? Where am I duplicating efforts? And what is it that's really going to cost me not so much to be able to reduce my spend on employees? And by the way, I don't believe in getting rid of employees. Please don't misunderstand me. But what am I spending money on unnecessarily? So I'm looking for that. I'm looking for my pain points. Give me top 3. And then I look at the opportunities out there, and there are so many that I wouldn't discount any of them. I think that you guys, among the many, there's a myriad of players out there similar to you, that I think we should evaluate all of them and even use them, use more than one, and see what sticks, and see survival of the fittest. With everything in life, like all these people come into the market, not all of them are going to be there ultimately. I believe in outsourcing. You're going to outsource to different players for different reasons. Similarly, I think you're going to engage with different AI vendors at different times for different reasons. And I don't discount any of them. I think that you guys are all doing an amazing job. And what I'm looking for some people, it's reduce my headcount. Just reduce my headcount, because to manage my people is my biggest expenditure and my biggest hassle factor. But minimize the headcount in areas where it's very administrative to start, because I feel like it's less costly to my bottom line to do that, and I can regain it if I need to. But to get rid of someone that's been like a very big player in my company and has really contributed to the bottom line, to just say, I think AI is going to do it, makes 0 sense. So I would look at what AI can do. And if I can teach AI that, and I get this right first time out the gate, what did I just save you? Does it save you people? Does it save you time and resource? And what about from a denial perspective? How many people do you employ to work denials? And are they by and large for this pay, or yes, they are? Well, let's try it. So why don't we try it on a select group in a select zip code or area, all of which I can get from AI. Your data's in the system. Think about what data you need to be able to produce a clean claim, and then come back. I'm trying to take like a case in point and then see if that could be the beginnings of my AI venture. That's
always the biggest question we see too. As a vendor in the technology front is, I've got a myriad of problems potentially, and the challenges of optimizing my business. Well, I don't know where to start, right? And you nailed it, right? It's either you go resource heavy, where you have, high clinical resources possibly who are doing mundane tasks, for lack of a better term, right? Or do you to look at your analytics to say, where's your greatest spend opportunity, and reducing that spend, and kind of look at different analytics to really determine where to start and how best to impact the overall business. So from your perspective, the last 10 years, we've mentioned the development and the evolution, right? We went from T9ing and rather than having BlackBerries on cell phones to having full-on computers.
30 years ago, but okay.
But what does the next 10 years look like, in your opinion? You've seen it, you've experienced it. I've got thoughts. I know you have thoughts, so I'd love to hear them.
We go through this periodically. This is not new news. We've had to do this on so many occasions, and I feel like we're resilient as an industry, and we get the chance to reinvent ourselves and be better than we were before. And if you're really honest with yourself and your company, and I'm speaking to the provider community, there's stuff you wanted to get to, and you wanted to improve upon. No one's perfect, and no one ever will be perfect. And regulations change every 5 seconds. And so what is it we can do to effectuate change to make us better. And in the next 10 years, we're getting that in the next 2 to 3 years, recognize that if competitive bidding comes in, right, becomes effective in 2028, that's also an election year. So I'm praying, my crystal ball for the next 3 years is, let's get ready like it's tomorrow. And no, we can't know what we can bid until we get our ship in shape. I mean, we have to know that we are as effective as we can be in the order intake process. Because let's say you shave off 2 days in your order to cash process. That's worth a lot of money. So I can stand a chance to bid lower necessarily. I never want a lowball bid, ever, ever, ever. Or if I do bid a decent amount and I get awarded a bid, I never say win, I get awarded a bid, well, then I have more pocket change at the end and I've got more profitability. So always looking at that. That'll never change, Chris. It never has changed in all my years of experience. Always understanding it will still require humans to care for the patient, I hope. That said, I wonder if, how much of the people part we will need. And I think we're going to continue to need, I call it escalation skill sets, people that are more analytical and skilled and understand data. We have data, and we're going to have to use data in ways we haven't used it. I think we're going to know so much more and be able to help the patient, especially as they live on into their 9th decades. We're going to be able that people are going to live longer by then, and we're going to be able to handle it with predictive analytics and genome testing in ways, genetics that we just didn't understand previously. That said, I do think that we, from a crystal ball perspective, better keep our eye on the ball and never focus your attention wholeheartedly on what's going on, the noise that's going on. Try to keep your head on straight all the while, plan ahead, be proactive, work on what you can work on, and always read, be curious, and be that leader that just be open-minded to the people that come after you and create a succession plan of those that you want to develop. That's what I have to say.
That's awesome. I always love your mantra, right? Reinvent yourself. And I think that's going to be something that every provider out there has to consider in the next couple years here.